I think we will get started. This is wonderful. I always love these and seeing all the folks joining in and seeing the names and faces. Those who haven't joined before, this is a citizen spotlight. We are recording these. And these are sessions where we highlight an amazing thing that's going on around the world, maybe a set of tools, maybe a set of ideas, maybe a local initiative, maybe something that spreads across those sorts of things. And in this case, with Town Team Movement, we're basically all of those things, aren't we? So you guys are tools and you're a movement and you're local places and local communities, and it's all happening. So I'm very excited. So just a word for those who are joining a first one or who've come to this fairly fresh about what Citizen Collective is and what the aspiration is. Citizen Collective is intended to be a space for people. We have the language of leading and learning for a citizen future, and what we mean by that is basically the people who are going, actually there's a different way of doing things to what we read about in the headlines. There's a way of doing things that's about tapping into the ideas and energy and resources of everyone in order to face the challenges of our time, rather than some other strategies that we might see around the world right now. So I've just posted in the chat a link to a Medium piece on the concept of a citizen future, if you want to dig into the geekery. Tamsin and my fellow stewards of Citizen Collective will, I'm sure, post links to joining if you want to come into more of the events that we're doing. It's very early days. We're doing a series of calls and open meetings. There's a Discord space where you can come and join the chat and see if you want to start something yourself. But we will say more about what's coming up towards the end of the call. For now, I'm going to dive in just a moment, but just to say a last word about how the call today is going to be structured and how we're going to do things. So the plan is that we will talk for about 40 minutes. I'll host a fairly informal but joyful interview with these two wonderful humans for about 40 minutes, and then we will set up breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. If you don't want to go into a breakout, if you're at work or you just don't feel like it, then feel free to stay in the main room. We're going to boot Emma and Jimmy into the breakout. So if you say that, if they're up for it, so you'll have so you'll just be with me and Tamsin probably, but we'll have some resources for you to look at and have a think about. And if you want to stay in the main room and stay quiet, and then the last 10 minutes we'll come back together, hear a few soundings, and go from there. Do encourage you, if you can, to find a quiet space for that 10 minutes where you can join the breakouts. A huge amount of this work is about connecting with one another, building relationships, and that is an opportunity. The serendipity of those breakout rooms has led to some amazing collaborations already in the first few months of Citizen Collective. So if you can find a space to do that, I very much encourage you to do so. They won't be big rooms, they won't be overwhelming, whatever. So hopefully that makes sense of how we're going to do things. Tamsin, before I start giving these guys a very intensive grilling, is there anything I've forgotten?
No, I think for anyone that has just seen the captions pop up at your end, don't be alarmed. We're just making sure that it's accessible for everybody, and you can drag and move those. So if you don't want them and they're in the way of someone's face, just drag them to the side of the screen.
Hurrah!
Let's get going.
Let's do this. Jimmy, Emma, it's lovely to have you here with us. Good enthusiasm. Can we start? So as we discussed the other day, like the arc of this conversation, I want to go a little bit like, what even is a town team? What is the movement? What's going on right now? And then we'll back into how you got to where you are, and then we'll look forward to what's next. So that's going to be the vague flow. So let's get started. What even is a town team? What is it? Why do you call yourself a movement of local doers? Who's going to go? Emma first.
So town teams are groups of local people. So they could be residents or businesses or people in different organizations that want to make things happen. So that is simple as that. It's how they want to shape their place on their terms. They just have to be positive, proactive, apolitical, inclusive, that sort of thing. And so there's groups now all around Western Australia, around Australia, New Zealand, and even in Poland and the UK now doing all sorts of different projects. So we have about 170, don't we, Jimmy, now around the world. And we call ourselves an underarching organisation, so we're there to support them to do all sorts of projects, which will show you some examples in a minute. Jimmy, anything else you want to add?
I just thought I'd add, just to add some context to that, someone recently described it as a mashup of Rotary meets Country Women's Association for the 21st century. I kind of like that one.
Very good. Do you want to give us some of those examples then, Emma? Give us a flavour of the book of. There's a book of doing, I believe.
I bought this along, and you can see this on our website, townteammovement.com as well. And there's this. I think this is the second version now, and we keep getting it reprinted, and there's more and more examples. And we've got a book of doers as well now, actually. But here's some of the projects, and it gives you an idea. They're all place-based. That's the kind of common thread, I suppose, and they're community-led. So there's environmental type ones, there's places for people, there's events and activations, and there's arts and culture. So just a few examples. This one, here's a food co-op for local people. So that could be food or goods, that sort of thing. That's in Tasmania in Australia. There's community gardens. Here's a community garden, a group that decided that their local park could have a bit of food production in it. So they did that. There's an example here. This was a really interesting one. This was from during COVID, when you couldn't have people gathering. So it was in outdoor spaces on porches. There was a music festival. And here's another one of my favourites that I was involved with. This was a night markets where people decided they wanted to have markets, and they just used the parking bays on their streets to have food vans and the footpaths to have food stalls and that sort of thing. So that brings them in revenue so they can do all their other projects. We've got things like this one in Sydney. That was just a vacant space that people decided that they wanted to be able to have markets on rather than just having a dead space in the middle of their town. This is a town team that decided that their area was actually an arts precinct. So they gave it a name, the Pickle District. And that's one of their annual things, which is the Pickle District dark art crawl. So yeah, that's just, I mean, there's so many examples. Have a look online. It's fantastic. So we would love to see this grow, really, wouldn't we, Jimmy? We would love to see this grow more and more around the world, really.
Game on. We're going to come to growing around the world very shortly. I love the spirit of this. I think you said, did you say something like, there's just people not asking for permission when we chatted the other day? They're just like, is that right, Jimmy?
Yeah, well, we do encourage people to
occasional permission.
In our experience, we've never seen anyone get in real trouble for trying to do good in their community. And I think sometimes people can probably, put a little too much emphasis on asking permission and when they could just maybe have a crack and do stuff. So, yeah.
I love it. And I'm just before I ask the question about how it started and like where this all began, because it's actually not been going that long, right? Like I think 2017 you said, so we'll come back to that. But I just briefly want to underline one of my favorite aspects as I was flicking through the book of doing the other day. Some of the names of these town teams give themselves. So my favorite was the Basie Rollers. I thought that was pretty.
Oh yeah.
You guys have favorite names? I mean, I know this is like asking you to choose favorite children, but any favorite names in there?
The Wellard Village people is always, I love that one.
Very good.
I like Ongerup Community Development, OCD. I think that's brilliant.
There's a town in Outback Wheatbelt here called Cadou. It's CADEAUX, and they're called Can Do. Can do.
Very good. Very good. We could stay in that conversation for most of the next half hour, I suspect, but we'll move on. So take us back to the beginning. How did this all start? Like, because it sounds incredible. There's so much going on, but give us a sense of how it started and what's really where it began.
Yeah, well, the first town team was started by a guy called John Carey about 15 years ago. It was on Beaufort Street in sort of inner city Perth, so where we're from. It's about a city of 2 million people sort of thing in Western Australia. And he sort of loved this street. It was sort of, I guess it was kind of like the artsy area, but it was quite sort of, there was a lot of potential that could have been had. So, he basically sort of called a meeting, printed up a flyer, and it was kind of cool because it's sort of traditionally these sort of groups in Australia would be either resident groups or chambers of commerce, like businesses. But he had sort of the idea of actually bringing businesses and like local, small businesses in the Strip and the residents together to have a conversation about, well, what are our ideas for improving the street and what are our ideas for improving the Strip? And and there was heaps of ideas at that meeting and lots of energy, and they started doing stuff, and even just like window displays or picnics in the park, and little gatherings or whatever. And they had sort of mixed. I was telling you the other day, John, the council caught wind of this group of do-gooders and started door knocking the businesses, saying don't get involved in this group because they're taking our jobs or something silly back then. But they went on and essentially didn't have a huge amount of success, but with their ideas. But one of them came up with an idea to do a street festival and close down the street and do a big party, and they did that, and tens of thousands of people rocked up, and the next year 100,000 people rocked up or something. Sort of became this enormous event, and that was sort of really when it sort of sparked something in Perth. And so then the surrounding towns, Emma's nodding because her and I were in some of those surrounding towns or neighbourhoods, I should say, started saying, oh, we should do stuff like this. This is so fun.
So this is where you came in, right, Emma? So you were in a neighbouring. Can I just say, if people can mute themselves, there's a bit of background noise. I think one or two. Thank you, folks. You were in a neighbouring neighbourhood, I believe.
I was, yeah. So I just moved into a neighbouring neighbourhood, and I bumped into someone I knew at the supermarket, and she just said to me, "Do you want to start a group? Do you want to start doing things in our place?" And I just suddenly thought, and she said, actually, the main thing was, she said to me, "You don't have to do it forever." And I just thought, yeah, why not? And it's funny, like, as soon as we said that, we just started doing things and realized that for years I've been trying to work out how to do things. And then it was like, all I needed was someone to just ask me, do you want to do it? And there was two of us. And so we just set up our own like social media page. And suddenly, honestly, we had hundreds of people joining and following in this huge network. And actually we would tell people like, oh yeah, we've got this huge network, we want to do this, we're going to do this. Really, there was just two of us at the heart of it. But we would just come up with a broad project and put things online and say, hey, we're doing this, anyone want to be involved in whatever way, whatever your skills are. We called ourselves Creative Maylands because our neighbourhood was Maylands, and we just decided that we were kind of tired of this idea that that creativity just belonged to artists. We thought, no, it's a human thing. We can all bring our creativity into our play. We should. So we just invited different people to be involved, and we got photographers and artists and graphic designers and all sorts of people starting to collaborate with us on projects. And so, yeah, it was quite amazing just to see how easy it was to grow that.
And then follow your journey through, Emma, because you've sort of plotted the journey of Town Team movement a little bit as well in some ways, haven't you? You've moved between.
Yeah, I kind of have. So Jimmy was talking about Beaufort Street. At the time I was actually working in the neighbouring local government, and I'd fallen into a job as an urban planner, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I was getting frustrated because there weren't enough outcomes. And so at the same time, there'd been a planning project in that part of Beaufort Street, just further up the road. And they decided that they wanted to have these night markets, which I showed you. So I started doing that, helped them, and started to realise how from the local government point of view as well, how much need I think there was to help people and how much possibility and how that worked in terms of different personalities or, that I guess it's like the creativity of bureaucracy or not. And then another opportunity came up for me to become the place manager of my own neighbourhood, my own town. So I moved into that. So both, I guess I could see then that town from both sides. I could see it as the person trying to do things, community member, and the person who was trying to enable it. And so now here I am at Town Team Movement, and I'm again really trying to help both sides and trying to help that intersection of the two, which is a big part of what we do. Particularly, we've got a platform which is Dean's speciality, which is placemaking education, which we can talk about a bit later, but that provides a lot of education and training on that kind of relationship and that enabling environment. So yeah, I've been through all parts of it really.
Well, so let's maybe go a little bit to placemaking education now, if we can. So town team, there's the origins. There's a sort of group that pops up in one place, and then you start to spread it because sort of people peering over their fences and going, we want some of that, and then
Yeah.
and I believe like 50 or so of the town teams are actually, is it 50 odd in Perth itself? So these are really like hyper local things that are then spreading in that way. And then, but then you're not just, it is the sort of local doers, the people just getting involved, but then you've moved into working with the local governments, working with regional governments, and supporting sort of both sides of that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I guess over time over here in Australia, you know, we've gone from this sort of citizen-centric society, as you'd say, John, towards this sort of consumer-centric society. And so with that becomes, the governments, have, more and more rules of what you have to do. And then because everything ends up being done by either businesses or government themselves. And so for anyone who wants to do anything as a, John Alexander in their town, it becomes quite a process over here. Like there's quite a lot of forms, and you have to do risk management plans, and it can get quite involved. So we and that sort of also has been the mentality over here, because I guess that baby boomer generation and whatever sort of said, well, that's this community stuff's government, this local government's job. That's not my job. That's government's job or someone else's. And so, that's sort of been a bit of an issue as well, so it's sort of like this mindset. And then, with that comes, I mean, we could talk about the problems all day, couldn't we, really? But essentially, we realised that we needed to do the work with government to, as Emma said, enable, to get in behind us and get in behind their people to be able to do this stuff and support them in doing this stuff. So, yeah, I would say probably more than half of our energy, effort, time has been working with system change. And, Dean, who's on the call, hello, Dean, created this placemaking education during COVID, and now, incredibly, miraculously, our state government here in Western Australia pays that for that education to go to all of our 140 local governments, and it's been taken up so well. We've had we're coming up to 1,000 elected members and staff in local government who have done the courses, and we're seeing dramatic system change and cultural shift, where local governments are now really taking this seriously and wanting to support their citizens in being part of being able to do stuff.
So there's something sort of bubbling and growing from the ground up, that there's sort of some fostering and some energy going into, and you have a whole hub of resources for that work as well, I believe. But then we'll come back to that in a moment. Sorry, I'm bouncing this around horribly. I'm in over hyperactive morning brain, and I'm too excited by everything you do. So there's this ground up thing going on. These 170 plus town teams, and I get there. I've already picked up the hint that you're pretty open to people all over the world, starting to join in and take those. We'll come back to that. But there's this ground up thing. But then you're also saying, well, actually, we need to work with the administrations and the mindset and the people within those administrations to actually help them open up to it as well. Is that how you conceive of it? Go on, Emma.
Yes, I think so. But I think there's also an appetite from them. I think that there's a lot of government realizes that it's not working. It's not sustainable. They can't meet all these consumer expectations because they're all different, and they're not consumers anyway. Maybe some of them realize that. And so I think they see it as an opportunity and a solution. Not all of them, but more and more of them. So,
and that's not where it started, though, was it? Because you were sort of saying at the beginning there was a bit of suspicion.
It's been a huge shift, hasn't it? Over the last couple of years, absolutely massive. I mean, it's quite funny, but Jimmy, was it 2 years ago or a year ago, won this Australian of the Year local hero for our state thing. And I think that actually helped as well to give us some of the credibility, to be honest, that government went, oh, you're not just, you know, annoying, pestering rogues anymore. It's kind of given us like a little bit of that, helped open some of the doors. That was a good moment. But they well and truly have opened now. Yeah.
What was that? Australia? What were you, Jimmy?
Yeah, we have this thing called Australian of the Year Awards over here, which is quite a big thing in Australia. And yeah, they gave me an Australian of the Year award for Western Australia.
This ragtag ex nightclub organizer. Come on, we didn't hear your story, Jimmy. So how did you get into this, and how did you become an Australian of the Year?
Yeah, well, yeah, I used to be a nightclub promoter and venue booker in a little town in Leederville, which was neighbouring Beaufort Street. So it was the next town over from where John and all those legends were, you know, really tearing up Beaufort Street. And, you know, we were all sort of 20, 30-year-olds, like we were really young. And yeah, so I had a few of the local traders in Leederville where I was promoting parties say, oh, look, you know, we really want to do a street festival too. And you're the events guy, promoter. Do you reckon you could help out? And I was kind of, at that point, I was really looking for something to do more, you know, to connect with community and not have to sell tickets to shows and, you know, get punters through the door. So I was like, wow. So, you know, I don't have to sell tickets and I get to, you know, work with community. And yeah, so I had this wonderful, and they said, oh yeah, we've already set a date. It's 12, no, I think it was 10 weeks. I had to pull a whole street festival together. And and I had to raise money and stuff to like get sponsors and everything. Yeah, anyway, we managed to pull off this street festival within 10 weeks and work with the community though. And that was the greatest thing. Everyone came up with all their ideas and were contributing and they came up with the name. And, you know, it was a real collaborative, amazing thing. And yeah, we did the festival and we had 20,000 people come down to this giant street party in Leederville. And yeah, it was pretty fun. And so then other towns, again, the way Perth works, other towns started asking me, oh, do you reckon, you know, we've just formed a group and could you do a street festival or, you know, help us out? And yeah, so I started doing quite a few and this was sort of all inner city Perth. And so that was a couple of years later. And then I was sort of in this interesting position because I was working with multiple towns over, you know, with multiple councils, like we call them councils, local governments. And I sort of saw this same pattern of, you know, it was really hard to raise the money. It was really hard to attract and retain the volunteers. It was really hard to get all the approvals from the local governments. And I sort of saw all these, you know, this was this incredible thing happening, but could see all these pain points. And that was when we started. I was like, there's got to be something we could do here to sort of help. And yeah, the other thing was the sharing of the information and knowledge, which wasn't happening because everyone was sort of having to reinvent the wheel every single time and make the same mistakes every single time. And so we're like, oh, let's try and do something. And that was when I met Dean and Emma soon afterwards, and a few more of us got together and essentially started Town Team movement because to try and solve these issues. The other thing that Dean brought was he was saying, oh yeah, I've started getting a lot of, because he was on Beaufort Street, he was part of the Beaufort Street festival and the Beaufort Street network with John. And he was saying, oh yeah, I've been getting a lot of people asking me how to start groups as well. And we were like, oh wow, wouldn't it be so cool if we could get help some groups start in the outlying areas of Perth, like because we're sort of like a sprawling, I think we're the most spread out metropolis in the world. So I think our city spans 100 kilometres or something ridiculous. Yeah, so it's quite a large spread out town. So we're like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if we could help, the outer suburbs do some of this stuff and have this fun too. And so, yeah, we started Town Team movement, and then, yeah, that was about 7 years ago, and it sort of exploded because suddenly we were getting inquiries not only from our own city, but other towns in our state, and then other cities in other states, and now other countries. And so yeah, it's been quite a journey, quite a surprise. Still feel a bit shell shocked, John.
You still look a bit stunned, Jimmy. You still look a bit stunned. So there's two things I want to draw out of that. The first is just a point about, and you said it again just at the end there, like the fun, right? Like the joy of this, and how actually these street parties, street festivals seem to have been such a core part of this. And I was reflecting on this after we first chatted, after we sort of had our prep chat the other day, and I was thinking about how true that is of so many of the really thriving organisations that I know of. I was actually in a place called Nottingham, a city in the East Midlands of the UK yesterday, and amazing whole sort of wave of community organisations and stuff going on in Nottingham that I had no idea about. And when I went to walk around with one of the kind of key animators of that work, he was telling me that it started with a music festival called the Hockley Hustle, where they had like, and they had like, apparently in the first year they had bands playing in like barbershops and hairdressers and bookshops, because they just turned the whole neighborhood into a music venue. And it really made me think the same thing is true. And in Grimsby, a lot of people have heard me talk about East Marsh United, amazing organization I deeply love, in a tough part of the country. And one of the very first things they did was start a 6-monthly arts festival where local people could perform and celebrate their own talents. And so just to underline really that spirit of like celebrating and drawing together that local pride as a starting point for this work, I think is really fascinating. And feel free to reflect on that. But as you do so, and I'll go to maybe Emma first again on this, but I'd love you then to feel free not to as well. You can just go to the second part of this question if you like. But I'd love you to say a word more about. So I've posted the link to placemaking education in the chat, and that is a phenomenal resource, particularly facing sort of local government and so on, and equipping people to open up in that way. And there's thousands of people using that all over the world, I know. But I'd love to zoom in a little bit more on the Town Team Hub and the resources for town teams. And particularly, like, I know there's a lot of people on this call who are just getting started or want to. Are there resources there for those sorts of people? And can people on this call kind of go and check that stuff out? Jimmy's suddenly animated. He's not shocked anymore.
I know.
Yeah, they definitely go to our website. Yeah, townteammovement.com, and in the top right hand corner there's a Town Team Hub, and you can sign up to the Town Team Hub, and that gives you access to all our resources, how-to guides. We've got like model rules, heaps of stuff. And if you want anything more, then just contact us and we'll give you everything. Yeah, whatever you want.
So anyone can just pile in and use that stuff. There's no restrictions. We don't have to.
Oh, I think you might have to give your email, but we don't use it for anything.
You're probably about as good at use of data and sort of structuring things as we are. Go on, Emma, you were going to chip in.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're also just all about keeping things really simple, not overloading yourself. And so we've got things like even quick wins guides, just really simple projects to get started where you need almost nothing, maybe not even any money. And you can just get together and just do a few things. It might just be, making some seed bombs to grow some wildflowers, or it might just be, what could it be, Jimmy? There's heaps of different little events, all sorts of things. So anyway, we've got a few guides like that. So they are on the website, aren't they? The links that you should be able to get hold of as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if people, so there's also a fair few people on this call. I'm looking down the names and seeing folks who I know who are involved in town, like, what are kind of town teams? Can they join? And what do people need to be able to sort of self-ascribe as a town team? And do they have to rename themselves a town team or anything like that?
No. Yeah. No, just send us an email with your name and like what place you're from, whether it's a town or a neighbourhood, and just say that you agree with our charter. So we're a movement that's joined together by principles, not rules. And our principles are, as Emma sort of mentioned before, it's about positivity, doing stuff. It's not about complaining to your government. It's about focusing on what you can do as a citizen, as an empowered citizen, and what your ideas are, and just crack on and do them, you know. And that's the essence of our movement. And then be respectful and honest and good along the way. That's
and inclusive. Everyone's welcome. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I want to look forward a little bit and understand where you're at and what you're unlocking now. And I'm also conscious that Emma might want to. Did you want to share a couple of things on screen, or are you happy?
Well, I've kind of got them for later. So I've got something about the placemaking education, which we can talk about a bit later, which is exciting, and also just our contact details, and if you're interested in finding out more about town teams. So I can put them up later, but I think Jimmy was going to talk a bit about an exciting program that's kind of taken off.
What's going on, Jimmy? What you got? Australian of the Year twice? What's going to happen?
Well, I think maybe because they gave me that award, you sort of get a bit more trust from the higher powers that be. But I guess for me, John, it was all about originally just connecting with people and the joy of bringing people together and watching them connect. And I remember that first festival, like so many people in our local neighbourhood who didn't even know each other, connecting and just, I got so many emails from people saying, oh, it was so good. I've never seen Bruce at the Oxford Bookshop smile before, and he's out there beaming, and like all that sort of stuff. But then I guess as we went along, we sort of realised, like, actually, hang on, this is actually more than just bringing people together, and this is actually we sort of stumbled upon a cornerstone of how democracy and society works. And, a lot of us are concerned with climate change and, what was happening and feeling helpless and frustrated by that, sort of started thinking, well, what else can we do with this community organising thing? And a lot of the groups, were starting to do these amazing things in terms of enhancing their places, planting trees, improving parks and gardens, and as Emma showed, building community gardens, and sort of doing these other initiatives that just going beyond the party, and creating all this other really cool stuff in their places. And one of the things that we kind of started doing, and one of my roles in the movement is negotiating partnerships and finding groups money. And so I managed to get this meeting with a Director General of the transport agencies in Western Australia. We were like, we can use placemaking to help slow traffic down, make better places, create more people-friendly places rather than cars and fumes and everything.
This is like when you get into something like an infrastructure department, the budgets, suddenly you're talking scales of money, and because you're able to start saying we can deliver the outcomes of safer streets by doing community building, basically. So
basically. And also, there'd been a few projects from them that they had got a lot of, like recent projects that they got a lot of kickback from community because they hadn't involved community or properly informed them. So I think
they just impose kind of speed limits and safety measures and these things, and they get kickback from that. But you can do this in a way where you're doing it with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, politically it's unpalatable for government to do it, but for community to do it, completely different.
So then, to their credit, he fully got it straight away. And he's like, of course, we'll just, we can, if it's the community's ideas and we're working with them, and, it's obviously safe and everything's ticked off, it's not so cavalier where you just encouraging people to rip up roads or, but, there are some checks and balances.
So you managed to get how much sorry, I'm keen to give people a chance to meet one another and digest some of this. So the program is it's called Streets Alive, I believe.
Streets Alive. So it's got its own website, streetsalive.org. And it's basically so we give a lot of the money away to organizations to do whatever ideas they might have to make their streets safer and slow down traffic and make them more people friendly, active transport, that sort of stuff. But it's, yeah, pretty fun because it's a major transport agency giving money to people to be able to solve their own issues in there. And so we've seen like lots of schools, you know, PNCs do stuff to make, you know, their road safe around their schools. We've seen lots of people do, you know, because it's actually a real thing, having more trees planted along streets helps slow traffic down. So there's lots of greening programs. Street art, so putting, you know, art on the streets has proven to slow traffic down. So yeah, it's all this like amazing cool stuff that all these people are coming up with and doing, and it's being paid for by you know, sort of main roads who are traditionally just, you know, concrete and tarmac, you know. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
I love that so much. Is there anything more, like, we've got a couple of minutes and then I'd love to give people a chance to get into breakouts and have a digest and come back with any questions. Jimmy's holding up a Safer Speeds and Better Places community toolkit.
Yeah, we've got this toolkit to help people with some ideas. Yeah, that front cover is a big road mural on Risley Street in over here. Yeah,
It's hard to get the right distance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that you can get that. That's free online too. You can download that. And there's some other world examples.
I mean, you guys are on fire. I'm loving this. It's wonderful to hear all of this, and I think this, like, Streets Alive speaks to something that I really love, because suddenly you're talking about genuine scale and resource that's coming into this work from other places, is being understood, that it's just starting to be understood that actually, like, what's seen as big serious infrastructure money can actually be most effectively spent by distributing power and distributing that money through community action that can deliver that actually ends up delivering multiple other outcomes as well. I genuinely think this Streets Alive thing is seismic. So huge creds to you guys. We're gonna, if we can, I'm gonna move into this phase where we give people a chance to chat to one another, come up with any questions or reflections you have. So we're going to give you 10 minutes in little breakout rooms. As I said, we know that some people might not want to do that for your own reasons, whatever. There are introverts and extroverts in this world. Some may be able to guess which of those two I am. But we are going to boot Jimmy and Emma, so you won't get exclusive access to Jimmy and Emma. Myself and Tamsin will stay in them. And like I say, we do encourage people to go into those breakouts because the relationships that form are pretty wonderful. If you stay in this main room, you'll be with me and Tamsin, I think, and we'll just post a couple of suggestions for reflect. We have a Discord channel where we'll pick some of that up, but we'll talk about that after. Tamsin, are you ready to launch us into some breakouts?
We are.
Maybe just take the opportunity to reflect on what's most exciting for you from what you've heard, and what you might want to do, and what if any questions you'd like to ask. So what's most exciting for you? What might you want to do? And what questions do you have? And if anyone wants to sort of post responses to those in the chat, we'd love that. If you want to just take this time to have a cup of tea and have a walk away, but still want to hear the closing comments, then that's also obviously fine. But we're experimenting with how we hold these spaces so that everyone feels able to participate in the full calls. If anyone who's in the room wants to post any responses to those three questions, what's most exciting, what you want to do, what questions do you have? It would be lovely to have a bit of that in the chat. It's hard to find anything that isn't exciting about this. It's very cool, isn't it? I was quite excited. I have to say I was quite excited when I met these folks. I mean, I'm fairly excitable to be honest. So, okay, folks, as you come back in, please do post any questions or reflections in the chat. If we don't,
mute
please
yourselves.
keep yourself on mute if you can. If you
gone back into the main.
If you've had a wonderful conversation but you didn't manage to exchange details, you should be able to click on the blue box that says meeting group chat if you open the chat and find who you were talking to and be able to message them so you can continue. These relationships are such a vital part of this work. But it would be lovely if we can just to hear we're only going to have time. We do want to close these meetings on time. That's part of our commitment. So it'd be lovely just to hear maybe a minute from a couple of people. If anyone would really like to share a word or two, just unmute yourself and ask a question or share a reflection. We'll take 2 or 3, and then we'll come back to Jimmy and Emma for some closing notes. Elizabeth, come, my friend, speak.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I better make it good here. Um, I just wanted to ask, I put this in the chat as well, but I just wanted to ask a bit about the nuts and bolts of how it has worked being apolitical. Because I think, and I live in the UK, but I'm coming from a US perspective, and I think it's hard to think of an issue that someone couldn't deem as political. So I'm also working on something trying to do kind of civic engagement from an apolitical perspective. And I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you've met challenges that might arise from trying to do things that way. Does that make sense?
Lovely. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll hear from Genevieve as well before, if you guys are able to make yourself a note of anything you might want to say, Jimmy, Emma, and we'll get Genevieve's voice into the space too. And then maybe one more if anyone wants to raise their hand or just post in the chat, I really want to speak, then please do that. Genevieve.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for this space. I'm loving this conversation. I moved to Portugal 5 years ago. I'm British, and I live in a village about half an hour south of Lisbon with lots of expats moving here from all over the world. We're inundated with Americans at the moment who are escaping things over there. I'm working with a few friends to bring the international community and local people together and bridge divides there. It's quite a different kind of tax regime for people who are from elsewhere, and I think that's starting to cause some problems. So really keen to hear about cross-cultural placemaking and how to bridge divides. So anything you can share on that?
I think we'll probably have to hold there. I will say Tamsin will close the meeting just by saying a word about the Discord and we'll make Jimmy and Emma show up in the Discord and answer a few questions if we can there as well, and about some of the upcoming events. But for now, just give Jimmy and Emma a chance to share a couple of reflections on how you deal with, I think they're related questions, how you deal with cultural divides, how you deal with political divides in some of this work. Who wants to go?
Did you want to go, Emma, or do you want me?
I don't mind.
Go on, Emma.
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of the political one, I think we ended up having a massive conversation about this yesterday. It's an ongoing one, but really for a town team, it's that, you collaborate politically, but your members really shouldn't be political, I suppose. They shouldn't be a candidate. They shouldn't be somebody that's in the government, I suppose. So, and when you are collaborating with them, you need to try to be fair, I suppose, not favour, because that's partly why people trust us and why we have credibility. If we started to, choose factions and that sort of thing, we'd be in trouble. So, yeah, that's my first thought on it. What about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think our definition of apolitical is not non-political. It's bipartisan. So, we dance the political dance, we receive funding, we work with politicians and bureaucrats at every level. So it's not saying at all non-political. It's saying we're highly political and dance, but don't take sides. And that's the beauty, I think, of citizenship and community, is that all sides of politics can relate to that. The Conservatives relate to it, Greens people relate to it, Socialists relate to it. It's central to society. And I think if you position it as citizenship's really clever, because everyone can play at that table.
If I might just chip in a word on this as well, and I think it speaks to both, like what I've seen and what I'm seeing from all of the conversation I'm having is and these guys really embody it, the power of conversations that are about what might we want to do together to make our place better, rather than who are we, where do we come from, what do we believe, what are we aligned to. When the conversation is just like, what do you think would make this place better and what you want to do about it, that seems to then be a starting point that can open stuff up.
That's the unifying thing. It's the thing you share, isn't it? You have that common interest. So I think, it's perfect as well for Genevieve's question too. It's the perfect platform for it.
And I also don't want to pretend that it's all simple, right? Like this, and we've just like, if it was, then we wouldn't be in some of the political situations we are around the world. So let's acknowledge that too. Jimmy,
But
one last word from you two guys, and then we'll share the what's coming next and close the call.
I think for the cross-cultural placemaking stuff, I think the simple answer is food. I think food is a great way to engage and share cultures, and we've had a lot of success with food in that space. So maybe that might help. Yes.
Any last words from you, Emma?
No, I just had, when you're ready, a couple of slides which I'll try and share, which are about the placemaking education and about getting in touch with us or finding out more about town teams. So
we might have to send those round on email after, I'm afraid. But that wonderful, okay. And I'm sorry, I've run us out of time. But Tamsin, please let us know what's coming next. What can people join, and then we'll give a big sort of silent clap to these amazing humans and let you all go to your day.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I've put a few links in the chat. There's one to our Discord community, there's one to our registration form. So if you haven't registered with the Citizen Collective, please do, and then John and I can keep you in the loop with upcoming dates. We have a Luma account, which I've put in the chat as well, which is where you can see all of our upcoming events. The next thing that we have is a call on Monday lunchtime in the UK, which will be, we're calling it our check-in call, but it's a chance for you to kind of go one-on-one or two-on-two with each other and kind of really chat about what you're doing, and like we basically give each other the energy for kind of the few weeks ahead. I'm also just putting in the chat an exciting new thing that is happening is, and apparently I've written too many words, but it's we have opened our nominations for these spotlights. So if there are people or organizations that you would like to see nominated and you would like to see us interview and feature like we have done today, we're going to start running these twice a month. So John will run one as he has done today, and then somebody else from the community will be then hosting another call. But we very much want those second calls that we're doing to be brought to us by you guys. So if there is an organization, a tool, an individual that you would like to see us talk about that you think is useful for citizening in the world, then please click on the link in the chat and nominate them. And we will also try and package everything up today, because I think there's been lots of great questions, lots of really good resources shared. I will try and do an email out in probably tomorrow, which points you to all of these resources, and we'll get the video up online as well. So thank you very much. It's been really inspiring, Jimmy and Emma, and thank you to Dean from your side as well, who's been in the chat. That's been really useful, I think, as well.
And just to say, I think we've also got our second book club meeting coming up at the end of next week.
That is true, yes, on Friday, next Friday, a week on Friday on the 7th, I believe that is. We are talking about The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kilmer, and there is no prerequisite that you have to arrive having read the book. It would just be good if you have a rough idea of or an interest in what the book is about. And yeah, we will be we'll be chatting in a very relaxed way about our thoughts on the book.
And we'll send round some stuff about that. I'll send it from my mailing list. We're a bit haphazard, because the spirit of this work is you get started with the doing and then you figure out exactly how to structure it. I think Jimmy and Emma would probably align with that. And that's a bit where we are at Citizen Collective at the moment. It's gonna get big, my friends.
Yeah. Time off to read all your resources, guys, to give us some ideas.
But thank you all so much for joining us. And if you can, maybe we'll come off mute and we'll give a little round of applause for Jimmy and Emma and bid them way into their week. So thank you for coming, guys. Thank you for sharing with us, and we will see you all very soon.
Thank you so much. What you're doing is amazing. Thank you.
Back at you. Australian of the Year.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.